All right. Is that everyone? It is. We're all here. Wonderful. We can get going. Good afternoon, everybody. All right. Today is going to be a fantastic day. We are going to start putting everything together. So I actually ended on this last period, but I think this period I'll start with it. We've had our 4 forms of valid reasoning, right? Modus ponens, modus tollens, law of syllogism, law of contrapositive. And this is the Logic Lesson 5 notes. It will be very useful to refer back to today when you're working on the exercises. So dig that out. But today we're going to start combining all of them to start writing our very own full-on arguments from scratch. Now, sometimes this is referred to as writing a proof. It's true. That's what a proof is. It's just a justified argument. A lot of people get frightened by proofs, though. They had some bad experiences. They feel like, oh, this proof is so hard. I don't know how to prove that this thing is true. We've been practicing all quarter how to show that things are true. So I hope that you can agree with me that honestly a proof is not any more complicated than the arguments that we've seen already. It's just going to be a little bit longer, right? Instead of a single 3-line argument, we're going to start chaining some of those together to make longer arguments. And you're going to write them yourself. So here is an example of what they call a proof. I would just call a long argument, in which we are given a set of premises. It says, hey, from these already known facts, can we conclude this must be true? And if so, how? That's the key phrase here. How do you know this is true? What is your reason? What is your logic for making this statement? Right? We're not just simply going to assert not R. R is false because I declare it. No, we're going to back it up. We're going to be able to state everything you say must have a reason why you're allowed to say it. That's all this is. So in typical mathematician form, we're going to strip it down to the simplest, most lazy version possible. The bare minimum amount of information, the least amount of writing required would be this 2-column format. All right? And so on the left-hand side, we write each statement in symbolic form. On the right-hand side, we write the reason for each statement. We number them all. So statement 1 has reason number 1. Why can I say this? Statement 2, why can I say statement 2? And this keeps it all nice, neat, clean, and organized. Yeah? There's other ways to format them. We'll get to that in a moment. But this is the simplest, cleanest method. And I want you to really focus in here. If I only looked at 3 of these lines at a time, if P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. This is a simple modus tollens argument. We've already seen that. We've been practicing identifying these things. The difference now is it's going to be part of a bigger argument. So notice what we have on the other side are reasons for each one. We're going to start with the premises. We always start with a premise, or sometimes we might call this the given information, literally because that's what was given to us, okay? That's our starting point. And then line 3, I know line 3 is true because I combined lines 1 and 2 and I used modus tollens, all right? Your reason for every statement in these proofs is always going to be one of 5 things. Either it was a premise already given to you, or it's one of your 4 laws of logic. All right? That's it. There's not a whole lot of options. You just have to recognize, okay, which one is being used here? which one can I use to get towards my goal when you're writing it yourself from scratch? Okay. Any questions at this point? So what we're doing, what's the concept, big picture here? Your task for today will be to complete exercises 1 through 10. They'll start you off with some already filled in. You just have the statements given. You come up with the reasons. And then they'll slowly transition you into, well, now you got to write some of the statements yourself. And then starting with 5, they just give you the premises and conclusion. You have to write the whole thing from scratch. And then you'll go all the way to 10, where it's written out in word form. And you'll translate that to symbols and write your argument that way. Okay, so just 1 through 10. I'll walk you through 1.5 examples together. Just 1 through 10. But we'll do 1 together, and then I'll walk you through about half of number 5. Okay? So take a look at number 1. Here we have the list of premises. We've got P, we've got if P then Q, we've got if Q then R, we've got if R then S. I feel like I've repeated myself a lot. I always start with just reading through them and see what sounds come to mind. Hey, this connects to that because I said the same letter twice. If we want to conclude S, what have they given us to work with? They've laid it out this way. This is one method of reasoning to get to S. They started with if P then Q. How did they know to write if P then Q? It was on our list from the beginning. That's one of our premises. So we can write for the reason there. It's a premise. Or if you'd like, it was given. Okay, remember, this is the bare bones, like skeleton outline of your essay. You could, if you wanted to, write this as a whole paragraph. We could add words to it. I know that if P then Q, because it is given, right? And then you get all the, which leads to this because of this law of logic. Or you could add all those extra words in there. And you could create a more paragraph format if you'd like. Before we get too far, speaking of other formats, up here you could write it as a flowchart. Some people like to think this way. If you're a very visual person, this might help you. Instead of a single list, this one goes here, this one goes there. Right? You can see which ones combine and what order they go in, and it flows nicely. So we refer to that as an example. If you want to think visually of this, you could set it up that way. But we're going to stick with the 2 columns for now, because it's the most basic. All right. Back to this. Number 2, if Q then R, that's another given premise. Just write given, or just write premise, one or the other. As far as your reason is concerned, those words are interchangeable. One describes the thing itself, one is more an adjective, but it's fine. But line 3, if P then R, that is not on my list. How did they know they can say if P then R? How do we know that's still true? Well, look at it. Zoom in there. Ignore the rest of them. Just from these bits so far, which law of logic does that most resemble? If you need to, refer back to your 4 forms of valid reasoning and notice, hey, this last line, that's still a conditional. That narrows it down, right? Only 2 of these gave me a conditional at the end. It's either contrapositive or syllogism. Well, only one of them still uses 2 lines to create one. Contrapositive is from one line, create another line. So it's got to be law of syllogism, right? I took 2 conditionals with matching on opposite ends, and I condensed it down to 1 conditional by weeding out the middleman. That's exactly what we did here. I ended with Q here, I started with Q there. Let's skip the Q's. Go straight from P to R. That's law of syllogism. And you can just write LS if you would like. But we're going to add one more thing. We're not just going to write which law it is. I want you to refer to which lines get combined in this law. This is law of syllogism combining lines 1 and 2. Okay, just like they did up here in the example. From lines 1 and 2, they used MT here. And this is going to help you stay organized, especially if you don't put them necessarily in the exact order. Right? This frees me up. I don't have to put this one, then this one, and then it's always the third one after. I can refer back to things earlier on in the argument. Say, oh, well, give me down here, I'm going to refer to lines 2 and 4 to make 6, or whatever it is. Right? And it helps the reader who's following along. You've got to assume the other person who's going to read your argument is lost at every point. You have to redirect them. Hey, this is law of syllogism. I used lines 1 and 2. Here, see? Oh, okay, lines 1 and 2. I got you now. Keep going. How do we get if R then S? Why do I know that's the case? That's another given, right? Next line says, if P then S. How do I know that? Was that given to us? If P then Q. No, I don't. If R then S. Oh, I don't have that one. Okay, I've got to use one of my laws now. Which one is it? What do you guys think? Is it modus ponens? Let's see, modus ponens would conclude a single statement. This is 2 conjoined statements as a conditional. Right, so because I'm looking for a conditional, I need one of my laws that ends with a conditional. So it's going to have to be one of these 2 guys. LS. Yeah, I took 2 conditionals and I shortened it down to 1 conditional. Right? Again, if I zoom in on just 3, 4, 5, if P then R, if R then S. Therefore, if P then S. Right? This looks like a miniature argument all right here. That's what we're doing. We're just stacking these smaller arguments on top of each other to make the bigger argument. So line 5 is law of syllogism once again, except this time I'm combining lines 3 and 4. Okay, lastly, we have line 6 says P. That is the final premise on my list. This would be a good time to double check, hey, did I use all of my premises? Especially when you get to 5, 6, 7 today, and you have to write your statements from scratch. Use the list of premises like a checklist and go through and be like, yep, I used that one, I did that one, got that one, and yes, all 4. If you're ever stuck, check to make sure there's not another premise up there that you could use. Say, hey, this connects to what I already have. Let's use that. All right, so then now on line 7, I can conclude, therefore, S Which law of logic lets me conclude, therefore, S? I'll give you a couple hints. We got to have S somewhere, right? So it's going to have to use one of these that ends in S. So it's got to be either 4 or 5. And the other hint is I had to bring this line in before I could do it, right? If I didn't need this line, I wouldn't have stated it. So the one immediately before the conclusion is always a big fat hint. This has to be used, and I need one of these that has S. Only one of these with S draws on that P that must be used, so it's got to be 5 and 6 together. How can I combine lines 5 and 6 to conclude S? Which one is that? I think you said it. Modus ponens. MP. I had a conditional, and then I restated the hypothesis of my conditional, so I can conclude just the conclusion. That's all there is to it. We've taken what used to be like 3 or 4 separate exercises on the worksheet and combined them in one set here. Any questions on this process so far? No? All right. Then, before I let you go, jump down to number 5. Because 5 is when things start changing up. And you are now freed from the shackles of pre-written statements. You get to write the statements from scratch all by yourself. So here's some hints on how to go about that. First and foremost, read through your premises. See if anything comes to mind. See if you can start building some connections in your head to save for later. I've got P. I've got if Q then R. I've got if R then S. Hey, I just repeated myself. I said R twice. Hey, those could link together. I might use that. Right? Look at what you're trying to conclude. I'm trying to conclude S. Know that every argument is always going to start with at least one premise. Your first line is going to be one of these 4 every time. Your very last line, whatever number it is, it's going to be therefore S. That's always going to be the ending. So you've got the beginning and the end already sorted. What you have to do is figure out, how do I connect from here to there? How do these pieces fit together? What's the chain of logic look like? There's several ways to go about this. If you're not sure how to start, maybe you want to work backwards. Maybe you want to figure out the end. I know I need to conclude S. How can I conclude S? Well, there's only one thing up here that has an S in it, right? So I have to use that. That's almost got to be my second to last line, doesn't it? This says, in order to get S, I need R. If I know R is true, I could conclude S. Ooh, how am I going to get R to be true? Where else can I get R? Look at your premises. Oh, there's only one that gives me R. In order to get R, I have to know Q, right? And so you could work backwards that way to figure out one path forward. And then you get all the way to the top, and you're going to say, I have if P then Q. That was given. I have if Q then R. That was given. And now I can start reducing those. Hey, this is the thing I noticed when I was reading. Those overlap, so I can conclude if P then R from law of syllogism, right? And start condensing, making that shortcut. Anything you spot that can go together can be helpful. This is why we refer to combined lines 1 and 2. That way, you don't have to come up with these in the correct order. There's some freedom here. I could start with Q to R, R to S, and combine those first. Whatever you see first, that's fine. There's multiple ways to do this. In fact, if you go this route, the law of syllogisms first route, your answer to number 5 is going to look very, very similar, almost identically so, to the answer to question number 1. They even used all the same letters. You see how that's going to play out? But you don't have to do it that way. Here's another option. We could instead start with P. That was one of the givens. We could give the, not P to G, P to Q. That was the other given premise. And then I can conclude Q by modus ponens lines 1 and 2. And now I have Q all by itself. And with Q all by itself, I can modus ponens with Q to R and get R all by itself, right? And so I could link together modus ponens, given, modus ponens, other given, modus ponens, other given, until I get all the way down to S. That'd be another method of doing this one right here. All right? And you can mix and match and make some combination thereof. There's several ways to do this. All right. Any questions at this point? How to go about these? Yeah, give me one more minute here. Okay. No content questions, then I will just leave you with this final tip. If you would like to type your answers for this, if you're on the Chromebook, you can type these out. That works quite well. Remember that you have the tilde key is in the upper left corner next to the 1. If you want to type an arrow, you can do hyphen, hyphen again, greater than, and Google Docs will automatically combine those 3 characters into a nice, neat, connected arrow, just like you see there already in the pre-printed page. It does a wonderful job with that. The only symbol we don't have a way to type easily is the therefore, the triangle of 3 dots at the very end. However, you can do the insert special character and search for therefore and pull that up. You only really have to do that search once, and then it's on the page, and you can just copy and paste it wherever you need it. That works. But if you insist on just plain old keyboarding, I will allow colon period to stand in for a therefore. And that's a triangle of 3 dots. So that works. I know what you're referring to. You know what you're referring to. I'll allow that if you really want to just plain type and not have to mess with the inserting thing. Okay? That's all I've got for you. I'll leave you the rest of the time to work. All right, go ahead.